my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you 4 of my favorite vegan recipes. But first I wanted to talk a little bit about where I get my ingredients. So I like to go to the farmer's market first and see if I can find anything I can on my list. And then I supplement it afterwards with a regular grocery store like Trader Joe's. I like shopping at farmers markets because not only do I know I'm getting fresh and organically grown produce, but it also means that I'm supporting the small businesses and farmers in my local area. Buying locally is important because it supports the small businesses in your area and it cuts down on the emissions created when produce is shipped from other places. I also make sure to remember my reusable bags since pretty much everything is package free. So for this first recipe, we're going to be making vegan stuffed pasta shells. We're going to start off with heating a pan to medium heat with some olive oil in it. And then we're going to add in our plant-based ground beef. Once I get it in the pan, I start to break it up so it cooks evenly. You don't want to mix it around too much because it can start to get a little bit mushy. While that starts to warm up, I go ahead and start to chop up the green bell pepper and white onion, making sure that they're not too big and not too small, that they mix in well with the plant-based meat. And then once I've got everything chopped up, I go ahead and mix it in with the plant-based meat and I add the taco seasoning. Next, I bring some water to boil and add in the pasta shells, letting them boil for about 10 to 12 minutes. After they're done boiling, I remove them from the heat and rinse them with cold water. Doing this helps the shells keep their shape for when we're going to fill them later. So the next step is to stuff the shells. So first you take one shell and you fill it to the top with the plant-based meat, making sure not to overstuff it. And then you take the second shell and you fold it over the open side of the first shell, and then you place it into the fryer basket. And repeat this step with however many shells that you cooked. Once all of the shells have been stuffed with the filling, go ahead and spray them with olive oil. I use a miso, which is a great zero waste kitchen item. You fill it with your regular olive oil, pump up the top a couple times, and then it sprays just like the throwaway aerosol cans, but without the waste. After spraying them with olive oil, we're going to cook them in the air fryer on high for about 15 minutes, checking them halfway through and flipping as needed. Once they're done, they'll be golden brown and crispy on the outside. I like to serve these with chipotle mayo, which for me is just some veganaise with some chipotle powder and green onions for a garnish. After I finish cooking, I always dump my scraps into my countertop compost bin, which I'm actually working on making a video about, so stay tuned for that. So the next recipe is my fresh Pico salad. I sort of came up with this recipe from something that my dad makes. It's sort of like a pico de gallo, but it really leans into the onion aspect with the radishes in it as well. And it feels heartier because of the healthy fats found in the avocado. This recipe is super simple, it just involves a lot of fine chopping. So what I like to do first is chop up the radishes. I usually use about 8 to 10. I chop them up as fine as possible. First, I slice them one way like you normally would when you slice radishes. Then I flip them back up onto the flat side and slice them horizontally and vertically. This creates very finely chopped cubes. Next, I slice up the serrano pepper, which gives the salad a bit of a kick. This serrano is red because it was actually grown by my mom and got to fully ripen on the plant. Next up is the avocado, which, like I said before, adds a fatty richness to the salad. When cutting up avocados, I always take the half with the seed and push it out from the back with my thumbs. Way too many times have I cut myself trying to get the seed out before learning this tip. I also scoop the rest out so I can avoid any mushiness and get some clean cubes of avocado. Now I'm gonna finely chop the cilantro, making sure to remove the excess stems. Now onto one of the main ingredients, which is white onion, which again is finely chopped. Onion skins are really great in compost, so I always make sure to keep those on the side and put them in my compost bin later. Just real quick, I roll out a lime and cut it in half to be juiced later. Now that everything's chopped, I grab a mixing bowl and dump all the chopped up ingredients in there. And then I juice the lime over the top and add some salt and pepper, which really activates the flavor of the dish. And then lastly, you're gonna fold it together gently, making sure not to mash the avocado, and then serve it with your choice of chips. So this next recipe is one that I make pretty often. It's cauliflower buffalo wings, which is a vegan alternative to buffalo chicken wings. We're gonna start off by preheating the oven to 450 and get started with the batter. So first I grab a large mixing bowl and add 1 cup of flour. This is regular flour, but you can substitute it for almond flour to make it gluten-free. Next, I add in a half of a cup of plant-based milk. I like to use almond milk because it doesn't add any flavors to the batter. Next, I add in the spices to the batter, so I add 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of paprika, and then some salt and pepper. And I almost forgot to add it in, but a half a cup of water as well. And then mix it all up, and the consistency should be like batter, thick enough to stay on, but thin enough to coat the cauliflower evenly. Now we're gonna set that aside and go ahead and chop up the cauliflower into bite-sized pieces. After all the cauliflower is chopped up, we're gonna go ahead and start dipping it into the bowl with the batter, making sure to get an even coat while shaking off the excess and then placing them onto the baking sheet. Repeat this process until all of the cauliflower is coated. Next, we're going to bake them in the oven for about 20 minutes until they're golden brown. While the cauliflower is baking in the oven, we're going to go ahead and get started on the sauce by adding 1 tablespoon vegan butter and 3/4 of a cup Frank's Red hot sauce to a microwave safe container. And we're going to place it in the microwave for 30-second increments until the vegan butter is fully melted, and then we're going to mix it together. I also went ahead and chopped up the green onions that we're going to be using for our garnish. Once the cauliflower is done baking, we're going to remove it from the oven and toss with the sauce/vegan butter mixture that we made earlier. After all the cauliflower is coated in the sauce, we're going to go ahead and bake it for another 15 minutes or until the sauce has evaporated and the outsides are crisp. Serve with carrots and celery on the side and green onions as a garnish. The next recipe is for air fryer corn ribs. It's a great side dish or snack food that can be easily made with an air fryer. The first thing I do is get some water boiling and add the corn on the cob. I boil it for about 10 minutes. I had to flip mine because I didn't have a big enough pot. Once they're done boiling, I remove them from the pot and rinse them with cold water in order to be able to hold them while cutting them. So cutting the corn is the only hard part of this recipe. First, you place the flat end on the cutting board and then line up the knife with one hand and tap it down with your other hand, sort of like you're hammering it. You can also use the momentum of the corn hitting the cutting board to force the knife through. After cutting the corn, grab a large mixing bowl and add some olive oil, about a teaspoon of salt, and about a teaspoon of pepper. Then a teaspoon of paprika powder, teaspoon of garlic powder, and then you're gonna toss and mix the corn to really get them coated in the seasoning and oil. Transfer to your air fryer basket and cook on high for about 10 to 15 minutes, making sure to flip halfway through. While the corn is cooking, we're gonna make some vegan chipotle mayo. So we're gonna take some veganese and chipotle powder and mix it up and then garnish it with some green onions. So here's the final product. You can serve it with a salad or as a snack.